Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it is Tuesday. It's January 23rd, 2024. Thank you for joining us here at the Truth Central. We're doing podcasts every weekday. You can follow me on X at Corsi Jerome 1, Corsi Jerome 1, and on Substack. You can get us at new Substack just created, JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. We'll be posting quite a bit there on a diverse set of subjects, ranging from climate control through politics, presidential politics, international politics, economics, and COVID-related subjects and health. So it's going to be a very robust Substack, and I'm hoping to build it through the course of this year. Let's deal with a set of stories that are important today. Is being not much reported here in the United States, but China is having severe economic problems already. We've been talking about this for about a year, but stock markets are crashing now in China, and it looks to be a major set of down signals, even affecting some of these derivatives, which are these very complex bets that are held by the Bank of International Settlement in Geneva. They're very little understood. They're very difficult to explain because they're complex bets on which way interest rates are going, etc. And there's trillions of dollars in the derivatives. Now, China's having a lot of economic problems. It's having a severe downturn in property values that causes a major economic hit. China's also having labor problems all over the country, which are not being widely reported again. Strikes and labor difficulties. People throughout China are rebelling against the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. So as this market collapses, China's saying, well, what do we do? And the government is looking at ways to stabilize the plummeting stock market. Its early attempts to restore investor confidence have failed, and also foreign investment is pulling out as the world economy is beginning to slow down. And in large part, combination because of this war in Ukraine, which has taken billions and billions of dollars and put it in the hands of the arms makers, and also the general push away from hydrocarbon fuels, which has thrown the German economy into deindustrialization. So again, the effect of these negative World Economic Forum policies, the radical Neo-Marxism that is pervading European Union and the United States, leads to economic turmoil. So Beijing is thinking about putting about 2 trillion yuan, which is about $278 billion, from the offshore accounts of Chinese state-owned enterprises to create a stabilization fund to buy shares onshore through the Hong Kong exchange, and that will hopefully, they think, stabilize the downfall of the Chinese stock market. But again, it's not clear what Beijing is going to do. They talk about all these measures, and then they just hope the market will stabilize, which it's not doing. The Shanghai Composite is seriously taking a major hit. And as you look at various of these fund managers talking about it, they're saying, read one of them here. This is Alan Tan, who's the head of Asia FX strategy at RBC in Singapore. The boost to China's markets from any rescue package will only lead to a short-term rebound as more fundamental changes are needed. Frequently, packages which target the stock market do have an effect, but it can be very short-lived if not accompanied by more fundamental changes. Without more forceful economic and regulatory political actions, policy actions, it will not lead to the beginning of a bull market in China. And another couple comments, similar comments. I am doubtful that the rebound in Chinese equities on the back of this rescue package news is sustainable for long, especially if the fundamental growth trajectory does not change. So while we think of China as being a substantial power, China has grown very rapidly on the basis largely of U.S. investment and offshoring of jobs, which goes back to George H.W. Bush. It actually goes back to Richard Nixon and the opening up of China in the 1970s. So China's looking at saying, well, they could have put trillions of dollars here, but at some point or other, this panic is going to take over when their real estate collapses, when offshore business dries up, and when the world heads into economic recession, which it is going to do. Now, a couple more stories I want to cover, and I want to ask Chris to comment. We're going to quickly cover also another international war situation. We know we've got Hamas and Israel fighting in Gaza. We also know that Lebanon has Hezbollah, which is threatening to attack Israel from the north. Both Hezbollah and Hamas are funded by Iran. We also have the Yemen Houthi rebels, which are funded by Iran. They're attacking shipping in the Red Sea, having to divert it now around the Cape of Africa, the Cape bottom part of Africa, which extends the journey going from Europe to India or Asia by about a third more expensive, a third more time. And that's going to cost a lot for international economic costs and disruption to the supply chain, which is ongoing, again, as a result of more expanded violence in the Middle East. Well, now it's also clear that Iran is behind attacks in Iraq, trying to get the United States military out of Iraq. So we've had a whole series, and largely, again, unreported, maybe 70 different attacks on our U.S. forces in Iraq. We have bases yet all over Iraq, and our troops are largely confined to these bases because they're going into the cities, and in Iraq is no longer safe. This is, again, a proxy war, because if we are fighting Iran directly, we're not fighting Iran directly here, except Iran is mobilizing troops, and Iran could actually invade Iraq. I'll remind everybody, and people forget about this, but in the 1980s, there was about an 8-year war between Iran and Iraq. And that's when Saddam Hussein was in power. That's never been settled. These two countries will fight each other. Iraq is more Shiite, and Iran is the unique country in the Middle East, and it is Shiite. Shiites believe that the family of the Prophet Muhammad should rule Islam. Sunnis believe it should be secular leadership, like a caliphate. The Iranians believe that the last leader of Islam that was of the Prophet's family was this Mahdi, this young boy who centuries ago went down a well. He's going to come out of the well, and there's going to be a worldwide apocalypse, and Sunni Islam will triumph over all other forms of Islam in the world. It's insane, this ideology, but it is what they actually believe in Iran. So you've got Iran behind now violence in Gaza with Hamas, in Lebanon with Hezbollah, in Yemen with the Houthis, and now fighting with various terrorist groups in Iraq that are destabilizing Iraq and want to get about 2,500 of our troops that are still there to advise and train local forces. Iran wants them out of Iraq. And then Iraq is very much destabilized now. It has not really restabilized since the war, with getting rid of Saddam Hussein. And now Iraq is destabilized. Iran looks and sees an opportunity here to gain more power in the Middle East. And Iran, largely funded by the Biden and Obama administrations, largely with a blind eye to Iran developing nuclear weapons. And the Democrats have turned neo-Marxist, anti-American, and have sided increasingly with the Palestinians. We have our Secretary of State Blinken going around saying that we need to create a Palestinian state, and also trying to undermine the Netanyahu government. We're doing that again. Obama actually sent operatives in to try to defeat Netanyahu. I think the Democratic Party has become completely anti-Semitic, And I still don't understand why so many Jews are Democrats. They should wake up, because the fact is the Democratic Party has marginal support for Israel. And sooner or later, the Biden administration is just going to say to Netanyahu, we're cutting you off. No more resupplying you with arms and money to fight the war against Hamas. This is why I think you're going to see Netanyahu make a determined effort right now, while he's got the chance, to completely eradicate Hamas from the Gaza. And he's doing it systematically. Yesterday, over 20 Israeli troops died, which is the largest death toll for Israel so far in this conflict. It's a very confusing situation, and it's difficult for Americans to understand. But what is happening since Obama and now with Biden is we have more destabilization in the Middle East. And the Middle East is really at the very, very edge of being its part of World War III, because it is violent everywhere you look. This now is beginning to be an expanded conflict, which I think is inevitable. And at the same time, the Europeans and the United States seem to be running out of enthusiasm to continue the fight with in Ukraine with Russia. That war should never have been fought. Russia was willing to come to a settlement as long as NATO was not expanded into Ukraine. And the State Department under Trump, if you remember the impeachment, when Donald Trump dared in a phone call with Zelensky, the head of Ukraine, to mention Biden's corruption. Okay, so we've got the wars breaking out. We've got China destabilizing. And last point here before Chris comments is the commercial real estate market in the United States is finally, people are beginning to realize it's going to crash. And I've been saying this again for another year, been watching it very carefully. But Cantor Fitzgerald, CEO, they're a major investment firm, came out yesterday and said he was at the Davos World Economic Forum, and he was interviewed by Maria Bartiromo, and he said, this is the quote, and his name is Howard Lutnick, said, coming due in the next 2.5 years at these higher rates, you're not going to get proceeds on your commercial real estate, meaning when you have a $120 million loan on a commercial real estate building, and someone says, I'll give you 90 million at a much higher rate, then you throw the keys back to the lender. And there's going to be a lot of those kinds of foreclosures, because what Lutnick said, there's going to be a lot of these foreclosures, and major commercial real estate is going to get wiped out. So I think 700 billion could default, and the lenders are going to have to do things with them. They're going to be selling. It's going to be a generational change in real estate coming at the end of 2024 and all of 2025. We'll be talking about real estate being just a massive change. Well, the massive change is going to be an ugly market for banking. And like the commercial real estate, when the subprime real estate market crashed in 2008, we went through a very, very severe recession, and gold doubled in price. That's one of the major themes of my book here, which is how the coming global crash will create an historic gold rush, which I've co-authored with Dean Heskin. And you can get a copy of that free by calling Swiss America. I'm really urging you to do so. You're going to need to get some gold. It's still trading, been holding over $2,000 an ounce, and that's a sign it's going to get higher, especially with this economic turmoil and the political turmoil, the wars that are developing. So you call the toll-free number, 1-800-519-6268. I'm going to repeat that, 1-800-519-6268, Swiss America, and get a free copy of this book. It describes how economic downturns, which we're going into, maybe not until after the election, but if the Fed manages to hold it together with $1 trillion in interest rate payments, at some point or other, these credit market bubbles are going to burst, and the commercial real estate is going to lead the charge downward, and it's going to be dramatic. You can already see it starting to happen in China. Chris, comments.
A little while back, you used the word need as far as Blinken saying we need uh, a two-party solution, a two-state solution, if you will, not two-party solution, two-state solution in the Israel area and the Middle East. The problem is when the left wants something, they try to tell us we need it. We need these things. We don't need it. Netanyahu doesn't need it, and they tried at least to give Palestinians a homeland in Gaza. The West Bank is never going to happen. Let's put it that way. But the fact is, they try to manipulate us by saying we need these things. Look, we need oxygen. We need food. We don't need a liberal paradise. It never works.
It's amazing to me how, in fact, you get this insanity of the left, which is always dogmatic, totalitarian, and they're always offering to do some good. I mean, look at these poor older people. You know, we need to have health care for them. Well, that's how it all started with the Kerr-Mills bill, going back to Lyndon Johnson. It was only going to be a limited program for those really in need. Well, today we've got Obamacare. The left expands the social welfare programs. The left has always had a Marxist element to it. And this welfare has gotten way out of control. The entitlement part of the U.S. budget is growing out of control, and it will continue to expand. Medicare, Medicaid, one payer. Now we're seeing student loans. Of course, Obama made those all federal. The banks should be involved.
Another $5 billion, by the way, I believe. What was it? $5 billion from Biden just recently.
Yeah, he just freed up another $5 billion. Said this is all forgiven. Well, I thought the Supreme Court said he couldn't do that. I mean, here you go with Biden himself. Well, I don't think Biden himself is doing anything, quite frankly. I think he's incompetent. I think we've got a mentally deficient senior person in the White House who doesn't seem to be able to know where he is. And I mean, it's amazing. The Democrats think that's okay.
Have you seen the movie Brewster's Millions? The one starring Richard Pryor from back in the 80s.
Oh, I vaguely remember that. Tell me about it.
He inherited a load of money and he had to spend it. His goal was to spend money or else he wouldn't get a huger inheritance. So what he did was take this money, try to spend it. And at one point he ran for office and he said, I will buy your votes. And that was his slogan. I am going to buy your votes. So he paid people for their votes. It was funny when Richard Pryor did it. It's not funny when the establishment does it, because they're really taking. Brewster took his money. Biden is buying votes, tongue twister, hairball, that sort of thing, with our money.
Well, de Tocqueville said this. De Tocqueville said that when the politicians realize they can spend the public money and give it to the people for their own benefit, then we go bankrupt. And de Tocqueville saw that coming, the 1700s. And it's happening today. And there's no way to curb it because you've got the Republicans, which are Democrat light. The Democrats are now neo-Marxist. And so therefore, this is a mess.
But wait a minute. The World Economic Forum has a solution. A worldwide carbon tax. Wouldn't that be so grand?
Yeah, and central bank digital currency with a vaccine passport, and let's all have 15-minute prisons where we live in and eat bugs.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, have that electric bike. Make sure it doesn't burn in your house, though.
Yeah, don't charge your electric car in the garage. It may explode and burn your house down. Okay, let's do a couple more stories here. This disease X, which is the globalist new weapon, this is a pretty interesting analysis that essentially the message to these globalized messaging, these narratives that are put out in the World Economic Forum, and through this last week they were discussing disease X. Well, this has been so billed that then the World Health Organization is crafting a new treaty and amending their international health regulations, which we subscribe to, so the World Health Organization could order a lockdown on its own initiative, overtaking U.S. sovereignty and the sovereignty of all of the countries, basically becoming the world government over a disease. And what's the disease? It's going to be disease X. Well, when they talk about disease X, and here are headlines from the World Economic Forum website during this recent meeting, world leaders are set to discuss preparation for the next pandemic at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Officials from across the globe will be heading to the annual meeting in Switzerland with the risk posed by what's known as disease X, one of the key items on the agenda. Scare, 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 fear, fear, fear. The meeting will address new warnings from the World Health Organization that the unidentified disease could kill 20 times more people than the coronavirus pandemic. So the big push here is to say that they need control. They need absolute control, even over the narrative. You're not going to be allowed to disagree. You may be forced to take vaccines. If you don't take vaccines, they may be arrested and given a vaccine anyway. That's the extent of the powers the World Health Organization wants to grant itself. And we've seen this playbook before because, again, you've got now this World Economic Forum controlling some of the major journals in medicine with their narrative. This is all fear-mongering, but the problem is there's been even legislation in the United States on disease X, and people are largely unaware of it. I've done 1 or 2 spaces on this, on X, and I'm going to do more because it's frightening the extent to which the World Economic Forum, World Health Organization are planning to get world dominance by a disease. It's a cycle where they have basically gotten us to be demoralized. People for over, it's going back to the 1960s, we've been attacking religion, saying God doesn't exist. People are increasingly secular. We had liberation theology pervert the churches with Marxism. And at the same time as people lost their values, look at how the Democratic Party is going to run now on women's right to control their reproductive future, which means they want to kill babies. That they want to do more abortion. And some of them want to do abortion even very, very late term, in which case you can harvest the babies for their organs because the babies are just about full formed. These are barbaric ideas, but they're packaged to sound like they're good for you. So the World Health Organization is going to take all these measures and plan them in advance so they are prepared for the next pandemic. It sounds like they've already written the script and created the disease, and now they're just desensitizing us for what's coming next. And that's a frightening future. At the same time, our society is disintegrating in terms of its values. And so you've got this comedian, Rob Schneider, who is openly writing an open letter to this drag queen CEO of United Airlines. Now, this United Airlines, Scott Kirby, was seen in drag doing a bizarre dance. People think, well, these, they just love each other. These 2 drag queens just love each other. These 2 homosexuals just love each other. Well, let's take a look at what they actually do. So you've got here this guy, Scott Kirby, in drag, making a fool of himself, and he's the head of United Airlines. At the same time, you've got DEI employees in United, and Schneider wrote, as evidenced by the near aviation catastrophe of United Airlines Boeing 777 Flight 1722 from Maui to San Francisco on December 18, 2023, when your diverse but also incompetent flight crew didn't know which flaps were causing its near disastrous descent, coming within 750 feet of killing everyone aboard your United airline. So Schneider's also said that United employees have supported his criticism. He said, quote, "I cannot tell you how many at United Airlines employees have personally thanked me for my valid criticism of your careless and life-threatening leadership. I look forward to your swift dismissal by the United Airlines Board of Directors before your inane actors cause the deaths of hundreds of men, women, and children. After your inevitable firing, you can get back to your true passion, your drag queen performances. Well, this is the insanity here of the DEI. And finally, I think, especially after these college presidents testified to Congress after the October 7th attack from Gaza, this brutal attack, slaughtering 1,200 Israelis who were largely unprotected, have no weapons to defend themselves because of the left taking weapons away in Israel, which has been going on for decades. It's just like the left wants to take weapons away from the Americans here. So DEI comes out when these college presidents refuse to support Israel openly. The anti-Semitism of the American left, the Democratic Party, the universities is open. Hamas has protests all over the world in favor of Hamas, when Hamas is now trying to gain a Palestinian state because it attacked Israel. Rather than having the world turn against Hamas, Hamas is being put on center stage and promoted, and the universities are there in lockstep behind Hamas. Terrorists continue to get rewarded for terrorism. Our future is not very bright. And if this is the quality of universities, if they hate America this much, maybe they all ought to go somewhere else. And certainly Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, who had to resign after it was demonstrated that she had plagiarized her thesis and other writings, very few writings that she's done. This is a fraudulent nature of what goes on in universities under this ESG, DEI, all these letter alphabets, which as soon as they create one of these, diversity, equity, and inclusion sounds nice, but as Elon Musk said just recently, these phrases come out of George Orwell, 1984, when he had, war, and he was praising war. Everything was reversed. Lies are truth. That's basically what it comes out to. And why not plagiarize? Because these people have no objective values. Everything is subjective. So what's your gender? What's your race? Well, you just determine your race. It isn't what your skin is or what color you really are. It's what you decide your race is. Well, why can't your race be extraterrestrial? Why can't your race be, animal? Why can't your sex be extraterrestrial or your sex be animal? This is schizophrenia. And yet we're supposed to celebrate this schizophrenia. I think the American people are finally realizing that this insanity's got to stop because it's destructive. Just like the climate change movement is now getting rejected throughout Europe because the costs are going up dramatically for energy and the middle class around the world is getting killed. Unfortunately, that's the plan. That's the globalist plan. Neo-Marxism can only destroy, it cannot create. And again, I urge you to read my book, The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy. I'm going to be doing some interviews on that and promoting that a little bit more because it's essential that this message get out. All of this insanity was constructed in order to depopulate. And the goal is to kill billions of people. And that's openly stated. The national security of the United States, Henry Kissinger in the 1970s wrote National Security Memorandum 200, in which he said, depopulation is the official U.S. national security policy, saying we would take measures to make sure population does not exceed 8 billion people. In fact, it reduces that number. We have depopulation as our U.S. government is funding gain of function research in order to make viruses and other diseases more virulent. This world is insane. Chris, any last comments before we wrap up?
How many times can one hear any last words or any last comments? I think you put it together quite nicely. Diversity, equity, and inclusion sounds nice. And like we said before, the left will tell you we need diversity, equity, and inclusion. What we really need is quality and equal opportunity. I get the equal opportunity in finding talent in places like rural areas and of course deep urban areas, which don't get a lot of attention from schools or attention from businesses. I appreciate opportunity zones, the idea that Trump had a while ago and Kennedy's idea for that. but I don't appreciate the idea of just filling uh, a checklist just to put a quota together and show the world, hey, look at us. We're fantastic because we're diverse. By the way, I wouldn't be riding my planes. I wouldn't trust the air traffic controllers. And by the way, watch and take a real look at who's teaching your children.
Well, let's wrap up today. In the end, God always wins. I agree with you, Chris. Let's have competence. Let's have people admitted into schools because they belong there.
Well, that's the DNC's new slogan for 2024.
What's
Vote
that?
Democrat because competence is overrated.
That's a good one. I like that one. That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, this commercial running, I've been posting it on X, these kids who say, when I grow up, I want to be judged by my race. You know, and they just go through a whole list of all these Democratic, and these kids are saying it, and it just is hilarious.
The only person who should say that is Mario Andretti, maybe Danica Patrick.
Okay.
Jeff Gordon.
Another good one. Another good one.
I got a million.
Well, good. I like it. We'll have more of those. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi today. It's Tuesday. It's January 23rd, 2024. Thank you for joining us. In the end, God always wins. God will win here too. And we have a lot to get down on our knees and ask God's forgiveness for. Millions of babies who have been cut apart brutally in the womb, not allowed to see the light of day. You can't kill your children and be a successful country. Oh, it's a path to destruction. Same with taking God out of the schools. Country with doesn't believe in God is headed to down the road to destruction. And that's what the left wants. They want to destroy this current order. They want to kill people. They hate life, and they're satanic. And 2 Chronicles 7:14 says that if we do get down on our knees and ask God's forgiveness, God will hear our prayer and heal our land. But we have to it takes action from us. It takes action from us to reject this insanity. We'll see today. This is the New Hampshire primary. We'll see if all the Democrats supporting Nikki Haley can do something that I think, again, we need to pray for Donald Trump's success and continue to stay vigilant, making people aware of the insanity of this DEI, Neo-Marxist Democratic Party. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. We'll be back tomorrow and every weekday. You can hear us on many different channels. We're on iTunes. We're on both audio and videos. You can see on the upper right-hand corner of the website, The True Central, all the different platforms we're on. Visit my Substack, which is Jerome Corsi PhD. That's the Substack. Posting a lot of articles on that Substack, and you can subscribe to it free. Or if you want to support us in a paid way, if you like the program and support us, also look at the sponsors. Take a look at My Vital C as well as Swiss America. My Vital C is this remote. I'm 77 years old. I feel stronger than I have in a long time, and I'm more active than I've been in a long time. It's got creams for your skin. It's got products for your hair. My hair's colors come back into my hair. It's not being colored at all by me. It's come back naturally. And try these My Vital C products, including for dogs and I strongly recommend you give it a try. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. God bless.